Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. This is the first video in my DBT tutorial series. It's going to be geared towards complete newbies, and I'm going to start by going over YAML files and how they're used for your DBT project. So how do YAML files actually relate to your DBT project? Well, these files are going to be responsible for configuring your DBT project's resources, including but not limited to models. But going off of the example of models, these files may determine where your models will live, how your models will materialize, whether it's in the form of tables or views, the tags associated with your models, the documentation associated with your models, and more. You'll typically find these YAML files living in a couple locations. The first one is always going to be in the root of your DBT project folder. I could circle it right here. It's going to be called DBT Project YAML, and this is where you're going to make your highest level configurations that correspond to your models. But if you want to make specific, more tailored configurations to models, say only within the example directory, then you could also create YAML files within those directories. Moving on to how to structure a YAML file for DBT. YAML files are organized by spacing and indentation, very much like Python is. If you're not familiar with Python, I have some examples here to show you. The indentation is what is going to determine the hierarchical structure between your keys and your values. So first, let's take a look at the list that I have up top. To create a list, we follow a key with dashes. As you can see, all the dashes have the same indentation in front of them, indicating that they're all a part of the exercise's key. Now let's take a look at how to create a dictionary, the second example. We follow the same indentation structure. However, instead of following our key with dashes and values, we follow it with key value pairs. Lists and dictionaries could also be nested inside of each other. Here's an example of a list of dictionaries. As you can see, the indentation for the dashes indicates a list under the key coworker allergies. The values for each item of the list is a dictionary containing key value pairs. Thus, we have a list of dictionaries containing information about coworkers' names and allergies. Now that we know what role YAML files have in DBT, where they may live, and how they're structured, let's create some YAML files in DBT. So this is the UI you'll see if you're using DBT Cloud. If you look on the bottom left, you'll see your File Explorer, and at the very bottom of that, then you'll find your DBT project YAML file. As I mentioned before, this is where you're going to be making your higher level configurations for your DBT resources. There's actually already an example of a configuration there for you when you start. And right here, what this means is this key example corresponds to the example directory located within your model's resource path. And there's a configuration under it. And this configuration will apply to all of the models that exist within this example directory here. They even give you some example models there. You're probably wondering why there is a plus mark there. And this is so you can differentiate between your configurations and your resources that may have similar names. I can explain that in a second, but let's first add some directories to our models that we can work with. So I'll add marketing as well as tags, and I can add those keys here as well. So remember the spacing. This spacing is going to be used for keys within the models directory. So let's copy that. Marketing with the same spacing, as well as tags. So now these keys will correspond to the directories that we just created within the models folder. Now we can add some configurations there as well. So let's add materialized, and we'll make this one a table. But in the tags one, let's make it a view. Oops, I spelled it wrong. Now let's add another configuration. Let's use tags. And tags is going to be a list. So let's use this. And remember, lists are using dashes. So let's add the tag, let's just say marketing. Again, let's also add the tags here. Remember to use your spacing to the tags directory. And this one will be just, I don't know, test 1. Now, again, these configurations are going to apply to whatever this key corresponds to, which is all the models that would exist under this directory. And then all of these configurations would apply to the models that exist within this directory. Now you guys kind of see the point of the plus mark, because it's easy here to tell, you may not need to use the plus marks, but here it may get a little more confusing without the plus marks. And honestly, DBT doesn't really do a great job of making it less confusing, because this will error, or it shows that it's an error, but don't worry, this is actually correct. So the tags here correspond to the directory tags, while the plus tags, now that we have that little marker there, we know that the plus tags corresponds to the actual configuration where we are making those tags. So now we have 3 different directories, 1, 2, 3 example marketing tags, and we have configurations for each one that would apply to the respective models that live in each directory. Okay, now let's create a YAML file within our marketing directory that we previously made in the models resource path. We'll refer to YAML files that live within these directories as properties.yaml files. So let's go ahead and create one here. And we will call it marketing properties.yaml. And the special thing about these properties.yaml files, which again are YAML files that live within these model directories, is that they have the ability to define special properties, while the previous file that we worked with, the DBT project YAML file, does not. This is the main difference that I want to emphasize between these two files, and this is the main reason why you're going to need both of these files, because you're going to need to define these properties that you can only define within these properties.yaml files. So I'm going to provide a link where you can actually read more about these special properties in the description, and which properties are special and which aren't. But for this video, I'm going to show you an example of a special property called sources. So we're going to define sources here with the key sources, and it'll pop up for you right there. And it's going to ask for a list of names. So we're going to go name it anything you want, but I'll name mine's marketing sources, or source because it's singular, right? I'm using Snowflake, and I've connected my DBT instance with Snowflake already, but this property is going to tell DBT what sources or where to find the data that I have within my Snowflake database and set it as the source. So I'm going to use database DBT YouTube is what I named it in Snowflake. And then the schema I want to use is going to be called raw data. The tables that I'm going to want to use, in this case just a singular table, is going to be named sample funnel data. And now we have a source that we can refer to when we create our models. So I'm going to create some models here. The first one I will name just a very simple example, funnel data grouped. And your models will always end with .sql. And I actually have the code over here. I'm going to paste it in, and I will show you what it's actually doing. Okay, so now we have our model. Not too important what it does, but just group some metrics by one of the fields that I had within that Snowflake table. Now that we have our model, we can start to add additional configurations to it within our marketing properties.yaml file. So the first way we could do that, and you could tab these and it'll kind of show you what it expects. So for models, I'll press tab and it expects a list of dictionaries. So name, what do we want to name this model? Well, we already named it, right? It's going to be called funnel data grouped. Oops. And then if you guys remember, then we were specifying or marking configurations with plus signs before, but within these properties.yaml files that live within our directories, then we're actually going to have to set a new property, or define a new property, I should say, by using config. And this config property is going to allow us to make additional configurations to our models. So like we did before, we can add a materialized. I guess I'm tabbing these, and it'll kind of bring you to what it expects. And we'll make this a table. And then we can add additional configuration like before, say tags. And it'll give us a list of tags that we could add. So let's add, I don't know, funnel data. And if I want to add another one, I could add tag test. And once you're done setting the configs, again, YAML is based on spacing. You could go backspace and define another property if you like. So let's do just description. And the description for this table or this model is going to be metrics aggregated by channel is what it was. So cool. Now we have these configurations that we set here, as well as some properties that we've defined. These configurations are going to overwrite or be additive to the configurations that we had within the DBT project YAML file right here. You're going to have to find out which ones are additive and which ones overwrite on your own using DBT documentation. But for example, this materialized table will overwrite what we see within the DBT project YAML file because it's more specific. So if it's going to overwrite, then it's always going to take the more specific case. And tags is actually one that's additive. So these tags are going to be additive to the tags that we sent over the dbt project.yaml file. So that sums up the video. We learned how DBT YAML files are structured, what they're responsible for, which is setting up configurations and defining properties. The two common types of YAML files that you'll see, which are the DBT project YAML file as well as these property.yaml files that you'll find within those model directories, as well as the differences between those two files. Again, the properties.yaml files that live within those model directories are going to be really important because there's a lot of special properties that you'll only be able to define within those. And the DBT project YAML file, every single DBT project will have a DBT project YAML file that you'll need to work with. Thanks.